Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of our photography review show. I hope you all had a great week and I hope you're ready for more photography fun. Now, if you've never been here before, you already know my name is Jakub. I'm the founder of Clever Photographer and also landscape photographer based in West Sussex, England. Now, what we do, we review your photos here in this show. Basically, for the last 2 years, I've been reviewing your photos. I review thousands of images from photographers from across the world. And this is what we do. What we do, we look at the three parts of your image. We look at the technical part. This is where we look at the camera settings. We look at things like exposure, sharpness, noise, and so on. After that, we look at the second part, and that's the artistic part. This is where we look at the things like composition, framing, storytelling, the main subject, and everything to do about that visual impact. And finally, if we have a time and if I think that it's beneficial, I also give you some tips and tricks on your photo editing, and hopefully all that put together will help you to keep moving your photography forward. Now, to join us, if you want to send your pictures over, it's super easy. All you need to do is to join our membership, Clever Photographer Plus. To do that, you have to head to our website, cleverphotographer.com/forward membership. And there, for a little fee, you will get access to this photography review show. You will also get access to our Clever Photographer Academy. And more importantly, probably the biggest perk of the membership is a monthly digital bundle, which is always themed to the specific photography style. And it includes something between 200 to 300 assets, everything you can imagine, presets for Lightroom and Luminar Neo, as well as overlays, textures, LUTs, backgrounds, custom brushes, and so much more. Now, in January, we actually had a great bundle, very popular bundle, focusing on fantasy photography. And if you sign up for the membership now, you will get the fantasy and also 1 month before, which would be festive photography in December. If you sign up in February, which is in a few weeks' time, you will get access to the next bundle, which I believe is fine art black and white photography, and also the fantasy photography. So really great time to do it. Once again, to find out more about it, head to our website, cleverphotographer.com/forward membership. So this is all out of the way. Now you know how to join us and you know what we're gonna do. And it's time to look at your images. Just a quick disclaimer, today's episode is pre-recorded simply because I have another meeting at 6 p.m. So basically, go ahead and say hello on the comments. However, I will not be there to respond, but I will make sure that I respond a little later on. But you will don't miss any of the review fun because that's what we're gonna do right now. So as you can see, we are in Luminar Neo. We are starting in a catalog module, and Luminar Neo is the software we're gonna be using for this show. If you're using any other software like Lightroom or On1 or Affinity or anything else, it doesn't really matter. Some of the editing I do is really simple, and most of the time it can be done in another application. So that is all out of the way. Let's open the folder with the photographers and move to that. Now, the first photographer we're gonna look at is Caroline, and we have her cityscape capture. So Caroline, let's make the picture nice and big and let's have a look at it. So starting with the technical part, sadly there is not many details in the camera information, and that sometimes happens when you export the image. It's not a big deal. We can still look at the image and inspect it visually. Unfortunately, it's quite smaller resolution. That's maybe more shame because obviously once I zoom in, the image will start to be pixelated, but still, let's have a look at it. I really like the sharpness. I think it looks all very good. Noise wise, from what I can see, is also nicely handled. Exposure, yeah, it's probably a little bit darker than I would like, but because you kind of lost all the details in the sky and the colors, and the highlights and shadows, the difference between them starting to be really, really strong. However, when I look at the image, I really, really like it, Caroline. I really like what you've done. There's a lots of very good things here. For example, this effect on the lights looks really good. That kind of star shape effect. I think that's nicely done. It's actually really nicely done because often they become overwhelming and all over each other, where in this case, they really look great how they kind of dot it around the image. The long exposure of the train is also really, really nice. I really enjoy that as well. I mean, that really adds whole new depth to the image. So that's all well handled. And that's the typical example of, even though maybe it's not the most perfect time of the day to photograph it, still visually as an impact and the result is great and the picture really works very well. So it doesn't always have to be so perfect. It's just as long as things work together, it can end up in really nice results. So Caroline, I love the image. As I say, there is lots of things right. Composition wise, lots of great things. As a foreground with the train, it's really, really cool. It also helps us with all these little rails to basically navigate us in the middle of the image. Then there is lots of nice contrast. The game and play with the lights, I think, also works really, really well. So great, well done. I really, really enjoy it. So ashamed we don't have the camera details. I would love to know how long exposure you used for this image, but still great result. When it comes to post-processing, there is actually not much I would do differently. I think the brightness, all of that is really good. There's maybe a touch of a green tint in it, which I'm not 100% sure about it, but that's more personal taste than actually anything wrong. But we can try to go into the white balance and maybe just push a little bit of a magenta the other way and see if it's gonna help. Maybe just a little bit, just to kind of remove a little bit of that green in the highlights. Now, I'm guessing that you're getting the green tint because of the lights. Often when there is quite dominant color in the image, the camera can start to push that color in other parts, which in this case, just a little bit, and I think that can be easily adjusted again with something like a white balance slider. So that's about it. I wouldn't do anything differently. The picture is great. I really, really like it. So well done. Congratulations. And Caroline, if you can, send us more pictures in the future. So I would love to see them. Moving to the next photographer, we have a Zdeněk with the mixed style of photography. We have a really nice landscape. Zdeněk is from South Africa. This is why a capture very similar to that landscape. And this is why also we have an image of a rhino right here. So Zdeněk, let's talk about it. Let's start with the landscape capture. It doesn't show the camera, but on the lens, this should be Canon 11 to 22 millimeters. So nice and wide. With the camera settings, ISO 100, 22 millimeters, f8 and 1/800 of a second. So camera settings, spot on, nice and low ISO, f8, again, at this time of the day when there is plenty light, f8, f7.1, perfect choice. Most of the time you will get the best performance out of your lens. You will have no soft corners, so great choice for that. Also with the wider lens, like in this case the 22 millimeters, f8, there will be no depth, everything will be sharp all the way through, especially since there are no very close objects to the camera. So great choice when it comes to camera settings. Looking at the image, it's very good. Obviously it's a middle of the day, we have a little stronger shadows, blue sky, but at least the sky has some texture in it. The colors are really lovely. I think the exposure and everything works really well there as well. Looking at it, even though it's a higher image, there is a little bit of noise in the sky, but that's fine. Again, the sharpness is good, so I think all of that, sorry, technically it's done really, really well. So well done, Zdeněk. When it comes to composition, you already know I really, really like it. I like this style of pictures. Again, there is lots of stuff done right there. It's very storytelling when there is like a road. It really helps to the image. It's kind of, it adds the flow to the picture and it really helps to the composition. So it's kind of navigate us in. Then the kind of corridor also helps. The different colors and the contrast of the colors is really lovely here. That mix of orange, green, and blue is very natural and very lovely. That tree without the leaves actually is a really nice subject that's standing out from the image. So that is done nicely too. So all in all, Zdeněk, I have to say, I really, really like it. I think artistically it's done very well. I think the composition is lovely. It's very powerful. And I think, yeah, it just works very well and it's well done. Post-processing wise, what could we do? Yeah, we could maybe have a look at the noise in the sky a little bit with the simple denoise tool. Just add a little bit of luminosity. Let's have a look if we go maybe somewhere around, let's go 30. And then we basically just select the sky, which can be done in Lightroom or it can be done here. Basically, there is a tool here called Mask AI, where you should be able to select the sky and it will apply the mask specifically to the sky. So we will gonna do that. Then we do a little bit of maybe like a dodging and burning. We're just gonna add a little bit of darker foreground just to close the image a little bit further from the foreground and be able to navigate the eyes of the viewer. But coming back to our denoise, so selecting the sky, so the effect should really apply only to the sky itself. Now this will be perfectly fine. And once we're done with that, we can close the denoise tool. And as I was mentioning, I quite often like to add a little bit of darker gradient at the fore or front of the road, because I really think that it creates a nice sense of move through it. So what I mean by that is that we're gonna bring down the exposure and then we're gonna use a simple linear gradient to somewhere around here. Just bring it down a little bit. And then once we close it, you will see it a little bit better. Now let's adjust it if we want to make it a little bit darker. It has to be quite subtle, so we don't want to go crazy on it, but I think just maybe somewhere around minus 0.7 will do. And when I show you the before and after, you will see what I mean. Basically, the gradient kind of open the image and then lets you guide you through towards the brighter end of the road. You could do the same from the top on the sky, but I'm sure you're getting what I mean. So all in all, great picture. Great pictures, Zdeněk. Thank you very much. And let's move on to your white Rhino. Similarly to, we also don't have a camera details or lens details here. Let's have a look at the camera settings. ISO 400, 33 millimeters, f8 and 1/640th of a second. ISO, yes, a little bit higher, but with the wildlife photography and maybe if you had a kind of longer lens, it's probably quite acceptable. F8 is perfectly fine. Maybe you could have gone a little bit lower, maybe to get a little bit more depth, but depending on the situation there. 1/640th of a second should give you a really nice sharpness. So put that all together, should be all really good actually. So looking at it, everything looks good. The image is very bright, you know, so obviously you had a really strong sun coming from the top, creating that kind of darker shadow under him. Because of the light, everything looks just a little bit flat. So because the light is equal everywhere, even the colors start to disappear a little bit. And I think on an image like this is a perfect example where I would definitely go for black and white transformation. Otherwise, you would have to start to push the colors and it would really transform the image. So what we could do, we could, for example, crop it a little bit differently. We could do maybe a square crop. Let's have a look at it. Something like this. So that would be the first thing we could do. Then we're going to turn it black and white. Let's have a look. And then what we're going to do, we're going to make the background a little bit darker. We can do that with the relight tool. So brightness far, we need darker. Now the application basically take a moment, scans the image and prepare the brightness there. And let's have a look. Yes, something like that. We're going to also add a little vignette. Let's have a look somewhere around here where we're going to center it around the Rhino itself with a little bit of light in that area, maybe somewhere around here. Finally, I would probably add a little bit of drama with the dramatic slider just to let the texture and everything stand out. And that's about it. Let's close this. Let's have a look at it. Maybe we can add a little bit more contrast using the super contrast tool. And let's go for that. Maybe a little bit, no, not in shadows, just like that. And yeah, maybe a little bit of clarity, extra clarity, something like this. And that's about it. After that, a little bit of dodge and burning, maybe on the darker areas, but I think altogether, I think it looks really cool. Anyway, the Rhino didn't have really colors, so I think by moving it to black and white, you will kind of get a little bit of reduce of that, the loss of colors because of the time of the day, and then you can end up with something really interesting. So, Zdeněk, thank you very much for sending both images over. I love them both. The landscape is great, and the capture of the Rhino, of course, it's amazing too. So, again, thank you for sending it over, and I can't wait already to see more pictures from you next week. And finally, Tony, greetings to you. I hope you had a great week too. Thank you very much for sending your images over. Let's look at them right now. We have 3 captures. Now, I wonder if it's already this year's captures, or if it's last year still. I haven't really seen these flowers yet, but maybe they are already coming. But it seems that it's been a little bit too cold in UK so far. I don't know how about in your place, but looking outside of the window, it's super gray. It's been windy and rainy all day, so better to stay in. This is a perfect time when you can do some great photo editing, or maybe this is a time where you can get like a masterclass or tutorial or courses and, work on that photo editing. And so then you're ready for when the spring and summer comes and when we're going to head out with our cameras. Anyway, talking, let's jump to your images. Let's start with this one right here, captured with Canon 7D with the lens 18 to 135 millimeters. On the camera settings, ISO 100, 106 millimeters, f5.6, 1/750th of a second. So, camera lens all good, camera settings great as well, nice and low ISO, f-stop, yeah, lower, giving us this really nice soft background, knowing that you are on 106 millimeters, and the shutter speed 1/750th of a second as well, giving us nice sharp image. Altogether, it's really nice. For the subject, yeah, it's kind of almost, it feels almost sad. It feels autumny. Anytime I see these kind of flowers starting to lose the shape and color, it makes me think like, oh, we are just in front of winter or in the middle of the winter already. So that's just how it feels to me. But I think altogether it looks quite nice. It's very atmospheric. I really like the light. Actually, in this case, I quite like how it's kind of coming from one side and creating quite pleasant shadow on the other. So it's not distracting at all. The depth, again, that little bit of depth of field with kind of softer background works really nicely because there's quite big part of the flower in focus. So all of that works really well. And I think you really nailed it. So well done on this one. When it comes to post-processing, not much I would add. I think it's nicely done. The vignette works really well. A little bit of that kind of contrast there. All of that works really, really well. Moving to the 2 images with these flowers, the detail here, I love that. I think it's really nicely done. I love the background. I love the bokeh style at the back. I think that's really nicely done. The details are a little bit on a losing side. It's not super sharp, crisp, sharp, but I think it's a lovely, lovely image. It really makes you cheerful, and I think it really works very well. Just quickly running through the camera settings, 18 to 135 millimeters with 85 millimeter f5.6 and 1/60th of a second. Again, I would repeat myself, nice and low ISO, good f-stop and nice shutter speed. Just shame that there is a little visible movement, or maybe it's just not super sharp. There's a little bit of noise at the back, even though you're using nice and low ISO, which made me wonder if the image wasn't a little bit underexposed. Some cameras, when you then increase the brightness, will give you that little bit of noise. Still, it's a lovely picture. Moving to that artistic part, the contrast of the subject, of the main subject with the background works really, really well here. I really like how the foreground and main subject is simple. We have just the green and white. They come in threes, which is a great tool itself for composition. So just well done. Great. And again, the bokeh and the depth of field, super well. So well done on that. And now I would like to say that it's the same subject, it's the same flower, obviously a different shot. I really like to see this when you kind of try to create a series together. I just did a workshop here in Chichester talking about and teaching how to photograph like a dominant structures or landmarks in cities. And we talk about the strategy of basically creating a story to have an image of the entire building with the surroundings, then looking for a smaller parts of the building, and then looking for a little details like a little cross or colorful window, and then putting them together. I think it's really a nice way of sharing the experience and sharing the journey and sharing a little bit about the place itself. So similarly, I really like to see that in nature photography, where you can really go from far, little closer, and then maybe to this level of details. Anyway, coming back to this one, I think, yeah, it's lovely. The light is a little bit stronger here, lots happening, so that's always a little bit tricky to keep it under control. But as again, it's very atmospheric. I really like that kind of stronger highlights, darker shadows. This one is much more simple. We really play only with two colors, white and the green, but again, I think it's nicely done. The sharpness is actually a little bit better, but it is a little bit, I don't want to say all over the place, but we have this in sharp, this is a little bit soft, this one is a little bit soft, so yeah, it's tricky. Maybe a little higher f-stop next time to try to get the whole foreground in focus. Or maybe just focusing on the smaller bunch. I'm not sure. You just have to try different things and see what's gonna work on that image. Other than that, it's nicely done. Again, contrast works really nicely here. The depth of field works really nicely. So it's really nicely handled. When it comes to editing on all three, I really like it. Those two are nicely done. This one is a little bit cleaner. I think the first one has a touch of green tint coming through the white, but I've done it so many times already. You can basically just try to adjust the white balance and see if it's going to help just a little bit. Sometimes it's just a question of few points, maybe like a 10, and then see before and after, and you can see the difference. But other than that, I think it's really nicely done, Tony. I'm sorry I don't have much to tell you. Well, I told you plenty already, but I don't have much to tell you about the editing, but I think they are nicely done, really nice natural edit with a great result. So I'm not gonna edit them any further. Tony, same to you, like to Zdeněk and Caroline. Thank you very much for sending your images over. It's always my pleasure to see them, and it's great fun to be able to see your photos. Folks, if you were watching us here on YouTube, Facebook today, thank you very much for joining us. I will be back again live next week on Tuesday at 6 p.m. UK time. If you're watching on replay, thank you for staying behind and watching until now. And that's about it. Have a lovely evening. Take care. Stay safe. Have a great rest of the week. And I will speak to you again next week on Tuesday.